Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash.
I'm Bernice.
And we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
On today's episode, we will be reviewing the round 4 action from the URC, and we'll also be ending the episode by previewing some of the fixtures that are going to take place in the PWR, which kicks off this weekend. So if you enjoyed the Women's Rugby World Cup, we'll talk about that very briefly at the end of this episode. But starting off with the URC, as we normally do, another weekend of drama, some very tight scoreboards, some not so tight scoreboards across the league. And let's dive straight in by saying Stormers, Munster and Ulster all remain undefeated, although Ulster haven't played 4 fixtures yet because one of them got postponed because of Storm Amy. But the Stormers and Munster have really come out this season, guns blazing, fighting so hard with a lot of grit. The Bulls pulled through against Connacht by 1 point. I think a missed conversion for Connacht let the Bulls slide through. It's a good weekend for the Scottish teams and the Lions get their first win. So let's talk about some of the matches. Bernice, what was your favourite game of the weekend?
Oh, definitely not the Hollywood Ben Sharks versus Ulster match. I can tell you
Oh,
that.
oh, I saw that score and I
Yeah,
thought of
like
you
all
and I was like, oh.
oh, it's hectic, and I have a lot to say on it. But I think the two, I feel like the DHL Stormers versus every game was a stand-on match, but not in terms of like the match itself, but I just think for the Stormers and like how they've been performing throughout the season and the
Mm,
start they've had, I think it will be a big plus for them. They only have one match left on tour and
mm,
it's against Benetton. So I think they can walk away with a 3-0 win
mm.
on their tour. Obviously, Benetton will be a lot better seeing their result against Edinburgh. But
Yes.
yeah, I think the standout match was definitely Leinster versus Munster, and I think for
Oh,
and I think for a variety of reasons, it was a standout match. But it's Leinster's third loss of the season, and
mhm.
last season they only had 2 losses throughout the entire season. They were on match 4, and they were on their third loss of the season, which is quite concerning, seeing that they are the defending champs going into this season, and they selected a very strong side against
Mm.
Munster. So Munster claimed a bonus point win against Leinster this weekend, and they just they are building on the great start that they've had this season.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to win at Croke Park is a huge achievement in itself, regardless of what team you play for. But this felt personal.
Mm.
This felt really
Yeah.
personal. And I think Jack
Mm.
Crowley, he has silenced all the critics, the hype around Sam Prendergast at 10. Prendergast is not a bad 10, right? But he
Mm.
doesn't play rugby with the same sophistication that Crowley has shown in a red jersey.
Mm.
And for me, if he doesn't start at 10 for Ireland in the upcoming autumn internationals, I will be
Yeah.
questioning some of Farrell's decisions. And I know we all know that Andy Farrell likes his Leinster boys, don't we? Both on the Ireland
Mm.
representation and on the British and Irish Lions tour. And normally that is absolutely justified. But I think Faz is going to have to go back to the drawing board ahead of these autumn internationals because Munster have really put their hand up and are playing some cracking rugby. To be fair to Leinster, they did score after the clock had gone past 80 minutes, even though they had absolutely no chance of coming back from that
Mm.
scoreline. Munster had already got the bonus point win. They were in the wind by about 20 points by that point. But fair play to them. They go out and score. But wow, Munster just looked like I don't want to say trashed Leinster because it wasn't. There was definitely areas of the game where it was incredibly competitive, but
Mm.
Munster just looked a level above Leinster on this occasion.
100%. And if you saw the team on, if you saw the team sheet, then you would have thought
Mm,
like, oh no, this is just going to be one of those matches. Even though Munster is a very strong side, and they always manage to, I don't know, they're just such a strong side, and they always manage to put up a good fight against teams. And I think you mentioned it, but it felt personal this time around.
Mm,
But if you saw the team sheet, you would have thought like, no, it's at Croke Park. Leinster have selected a stronger side. So, I mean, it's kind of a done deal. Not that you would think that they would necessarily win by a big margin, but just it's almost a done deal that Leinster would win.
mm,
And I don't know, I thought about like both Leinster and the Sharks as well, because both of them have a lot of international players in their teams. And
mm,
I'm trying to think like what is kind of, I don't want to say what is going wrong at the teams, because I think Leinster is definitely at
mm,
a better place compared to the Sharks at the moment. But I don't know if there's just something about like those international players that makes the other team go, okay, we want to beat this side with these international players. We are going to step up our
mm,
game, and
mm.
ultimately then the other team plays better. So I'm sure it's a mixture of a lot of things, and the derby between Munster and Leinster have always been personal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Jack Crawley is just such a standout player. And as a Shark supporter, obviously it's not like we've had our history with Jack Crawley as
Mm,
well, but
hmm
you really can't look past his talent and his skill. He really is an excellent player, and I have to agree with you
mm,
on the Autumn Nation series. If we don't see him in the squad, I'll be very surprised. And I
mm.
think Sideburn has just been very
Absolutely.
good for Munster. I think we've seen him in the Lions tour being a standout player, but just for Munster again, he stepped up as a captain. He really imposes himself physically and strategically. Yeah, he's just a really good player, and his work in terms of defense is also insane.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. You read my mind talking about Ty Burn because I thought he was a standout performer on the British and Irish Lions tour, and he's doing the exact same, pouring that same passion, regardless of what jersey
Yeah.
he's wearing. I guess Ty Burn looks good in red. That's safe to say.
Yeah.
The breakaway from Ethan Cloughlin came from such a great interception. That was a fantastic read from him. And then he just goes.
Mm.
You blink and then he's like halfway down the field. That was an amazing try. I'll pop it on the screen for you because I saw it on TikTok and I was like, yeah, I've watched this too many times now. So, but I also saw a lot of the comments after, and every rugby fan is very passionate about their team. But I always feel like an Irish derby, like Leinster v Munster, will always
Mm.
bring out the passion. Any sort of derby like that will always bring out those emotions. But there's definitely a lot of fans who I think probably feel a bit of what the players have felt, maybe that Irish rugby hasn't. I don't want to say not acknowledged Munster because that's not fair because there have been Munster players who have represented Ireland time again, over and over, been on the British and Irish Lions tour. But I
Mm.
think having spoken to some ex-Munster players and some of the guys from Ireland who work at the club that I'm at, they all say, well, everything in Ireland's always political, isn't it? So, and it's the same everywhere you go. Sport is inherently political. You can't really avoid it.
Yeah.
But there has been criticisms of Ireland very much just centering on Leinster being the be all and end all. And I think
Mm.
actually the other three Irish teams that play in the URC have, okay, Connacht didn't win this weekend, but Ulster won and Munster won.
Mm.
I think they're really trying to not necessarily prove a point to other people, but definitely prove a point to themselves. So yeah, that was the game of the weekend, and
Yeah.
you loved. For me as a neutral, love to see the
Mm.
passions inflame because that's what rugby's about, isn't it? Everyone getting stuck in. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the Ireland international squad looks like in November.
Yeah.
Is this the year that Leinster drop off? Question mark. We'll leave it to you to tell
Yeah.
us in the comments. Drop us a comment in down below if you think this is the year that Leinster drop off because it's interesting. If you look at where the leagues have gone, you haven't. No one's won the URC back to back. It's very hard to win any league back to back. And
Mm.
I guess in the English league, when Northampton won 2 seasons ago, they majorly dropped off in the league, but then got to the final of the Champions Cup. Leinster they got to so many semi-finals, so many finals and lost. Finally get to the final and quite frankly destroyed the Bulls. Well, Bulls
Mm.
didn't really turn up in Ireland, did they? We've
Mm.
discussed that on previous episodes. Is this the year that they fall off? Question mark. You let us know. You tell us what you think in the comments. On the Scottish teams, very impressive weekend for both Edinburgh and Glasgow. Edinburgh nil Benetton, who I thought were having quite a good season, but for some reason Benetton just did not show up at the Hive. But Edinburgh looked very, very comprehensive in their attack. And I'm going to say one of our favourite players, Darcy Graham. Oh, off he goes scoring. His quick step and agility. Uh, we've already said on the channel that we think he offers something slightly different as a winger. He's a bit smaller. He's not a super big guy, but he's so speedy. So the fact that he gets over the line times two, brilliant.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise in terms of the score,
Mm,
in terms of the big margin as well, and the fact that Edinburgh managed to nil Benetton. I think that was not expected at all. And just seeing how Benetton have been playing and how they played last season, I think they ended off their season very strong, started
mm,
their season well, and they had a very good game against the Lions, and they almost thrashed the Lions in a way last weekend, and now Edinburgh nil them. So Edinburgh scored 7 tries against Benetton. I think this was one of the most surprising matches of the weekend because I just
mm.
expected a tighter match, even though it was at Edinburgh's home soil and you would expect them to win. Like I thought Benetton had a really good season so far. Edinburgh's discipline was a lot better compared to last week, and we said that definitely bet them in the match. So in the match against Munster, their discipline was not good at all. This weekend, you could see they definitely had a, there were definitely some chats around discipline and
Yeah.
improving the discipline, which is
Hmm.
great to see. And yeah, they dominated in terms of their set pieces, like their scrums were good, their line outs, which ultimately just gave them that upper hand. And Darcy Graham scoring 2 tries, which is great. Dylan Richardson also made his home debut for
Hmm.
Edinburgh, which was great to see. Yeah, I think this was a great match for Edinburgh. And if they can build from this match and kind of take this confidence into other matches, it'd be great to see where they go this season.
I agree. I think as well with the wingers that they have with Duhan van der Merwe on one wing and with Darcy Graham on another wing, their style of rugby is attack. Darcy Graham is a lot more agile than Dewey. Dewey will find line breaks and slip through and
Mm.
not the best defensive winger in my opinion. I know some Scots may come at me in the comments because of that, but I have like
Mm.
if you were going
Yeah.
to pick a better all-round winger, maybe I'm biased, but I would always pick Kyle Steyn because I think overall he's just better at the
Yeah.
all round game and probably has a better rugby brain. There's a reason why he's a skipper of a club that's won the URC, and Duhan is just a great rugby player. But that's not a criticism of him. That is just a positive
Mm.
thought on Steno. He is a captain and a leader, and not
Yeah.
everyone can be a captain and a leader, and that's not a criticism on Dewey. That's he's just good at scoring tries, especially against England, which makes me disappointed. Anyway, against anyone else, I'm fine with, just not against England. Anyway, moving the bias past a little bit. But yeah, great show for Edinburgh. Ross Thompson, when he came
Mm.
on the field, left a couple of points out there, a couple of missed conversions. However, in that game, doesn't matter. Leaving 4 to 6 points out
Yeah.
there, it doesn't really matter. Where that will be going back to the drawing board. And I guess baby steps will be when you have those clutch games, like we saw with Connacht
Mm.
and the Bulls. That missed conversion was the do or die
Yeah.
of that game. So, I mean, for someone like Connacht, they get 2 losing bonus points as a result of that game, but you'd rather have 5 points than 2 points at the end of the
Mm.
day, wouldn't you? So, but the URC is a long season. It's a big
Yeah.
competition. So there's always time for people to like just clutch it into the top eight, which we have seen in the past few seasons where it is the final rounds that can determine who comes into that top eight or where people are positioned within that top eight. But yeah, I thought Edinburgh, this was probably the best performance they've had all season. Where they struggled last year was they would fluctuate in between having a really great performance and being really poor.
Mm.
And I saw it in the fans' comments. They got upset. They were like, why can you do this one week and then not do it another? As you can almost like forgive well, I say you can almost forgive. I don't think you can forgive a quality team for having a lack of quality on the pitch and
Mm.
there are lots of teams that I have in mind across the world at the minute who probably sat there, and I think we'll get on to the
Yeah,
Sharks in a
yeah.
minute. They're not having a great season at the minute, which is a shame, given you look at
Mm.
their roster of players. Before we move on to that, Glasgow beat the Ospreys in Wales, scoreline of 17-42. Again, hitting the 40s, lots and lots of tries there. They seem to have recovered from their wobble in Treviso when they lost with that drop goal. And yeah, I always obviously want Warriors to do really well. They are my URC team, of course. I will look forward to when they are tested against a team like Stormers, Munster, or even Ulster, because obviously we've said they've not lost a game, even though they've played fewer games than other teams. But I would like to see them being really tested when you're playing Welsh teams, which are obviously in a tumultuous situation. There is obviously still conversations. The WRU are going through a consultation at the minute, so there is still potential for the two of the club teams to be cut
Mm.
or to be two teams merge into two teams. But that's ongoing. We'll give reaction to that when we know more news coming out of that. And Welsh rugby's just kind of struggled in the past few years. So Ospreys in the URC, they can be touch and go. Like last year, obviously Scarlets got into the top eight. I think the year before or the year before that, Ospreys definitely made the top eight at one point. They've definitely made the top eight in the past 3 years. I just can't remember which
Mm.
year it is. However, where they are now, where Glasgow are now, most of their kind of core leadership group have remained. Staino, Sione Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones, Scott Cummings. I mean, apart from Staino, those other guys are all British and Irish Lions. Someone like Jamie Doby at scrum half has really grown into the role. He's quite young. I think he will be a future British and Irish Lion because he's a great sniper, but he can also play a steady game with the breakdown. He's got a good kicking game as well, and he's slightly bigger. He's not a big scrum half, but he's probably the build of. He could probably pass as a centre, I think, in terms of his
Mm.
build, as there are other scrum halves that we've seen across lots of teams that are 5'6" to 5'8" and are smaller, so they will get targeted around certain parts of the pitch. But Jamie Doby offers something a bit different because he is built slightly different. So Warriors are in a good place outside looking in, which is great as someone who used to work there. So yeah, great weekend for the Scottish teams. Great weekend for the Lions. Finally win a game and beat the Scarlets in Joburg. Bulls win. Stormers win.
Mm.
Reaction on the Sharks, Bernice. I'm just going to pass this over to you because we've
Oh.
spoken about this a lot, and you've obviously put out quite a very
Yeah.
strong team against Ulster. And I think you said on the
Mm.
show last week that you knew you were going into this being like Ulster on good form. We really need to turn up, and was that the case or no?
Yeah. I definitely don't think that the Sharks pitched for this match. It feels like we were a little bit lackluster, and I'm still trying to like figure out what it is that's currently going on with the Sharks because it's not the first match that this has happened. It's not the
Mm,
first season this has happened. So we have had games like the quarterfinal last season where we played Munster, and it was just this banger of a match that ended up in the penalty shootout, which
mm,
was an insane match. And that was a Sharks team that I haven't seen in so long. And then come the weekend after that, we played the Vodacom Bulls at Loftus in the semi-final, and we were kind of lackluster again. And I know a game like the game against Munster takes a lot out of you, but still like where's the fight? And it
mm,
felt the same this weekend. You have all of these amazing players back. You have Sia Khaleesi returning, you have Evan Etzebeth returning, but something is not gelling. I don't know what it is. John Plumtree said that it's the integration of the Springbok players into the team. I don't really know if that necessarily is the case or what exactly is the problem, but it feels like we're playing very much individualistically. It just seems like something is not clicking for the Sharks, like something is not adding up. Like, yes, you do get your occasional missed passes or passes that don't go to hand in other matches as well. But with the Sharks, it just feels like it's a reoccurring theme every week. I mean, we are at 3 losses, 1 draw, and the draws against the Dragons. nothing taken away from the Dragons, but it's just not the performance that you expect from a team with as much
Mm,
talent and with as much skill as the Sharks. And people always bring up the thing of, oh yeah, but they have 13 Springboks on the side, and yes, even the Springboks lose matches, but you just expect a lot better from the Sharks. You know, Ulster is going to come at you. They are a good side, and this was also
mm.
nothing taken away from Ulster because they have amazing players. Jacob Stock, Dale Van der Kok obviously has been playing amazing rugby for Ulster, so they have some good players, but it's just like the Sharks as well. So I think you expected a lot more from the Sharks coming back from tour. Like, yes, it wasn't a great tour, but now you're back at home soil, and still they look lackluster. So I'd like to know from like a neutral's point of view, so like from your point of view, Tash, like what do you think from the Sharks' performance at the moment?
From having working in a rugby club environment and knowing the things that are going on, they'll get sent like maps of attack plans and defense plans, and they'll have code words
Mm,
for what they say, and they'll be practicing set pieces and training sessions, etc., etc. All of that kind of stuff. That is normal stuff for a professional rugby club.
mm,
Now, then you go, if you've had your attack maps, if you've gone through what the trigger words are, kind of thing, whether it's now, it probably wouldn't be now, but that's just a generic example of go, like all of those. But think of it
yeah.
as you're unique to each team. If it's a lack of communication, that shouldn't be too difficult to figure out because you're getting these attack and defensive maps. You're on the pitch, and if it is to do with the coaches not being heard, then they need to find another way to communicate differently to the players. You cannot say that you do not have leaders in the Sharks. Come on, you've seen Khaleesi, for goodness
Yeah.
sake. And if it's a case of prior to the Springbok players returning to the Sharks, it was a lack of leadership, then you need to develop more leaders throughout your squad. So your leadership group should be between 5 to 6 players with your club captain or your captain for the season, and then maybe one or two vice captains or a couple of guys, if there are injuries, who can step up for that. And if you don't have that core or wider leadership group or people who are willing to step up to be leaders when
Mm,
they need to be, I'm just talking generally here because I don't know what's happening with the specifics with the Sharks. I can only speculate what's happening on an internal end. You don't know if
mm,
personal things have been happening in their lives and they're carrying that onto the field and not able to separate that. Again, speculation, you don't know what's happening. But
mm,
it will come down to a couple of core things. Where is the team cohesion? From what you've told me, there seems to be a real lack of team
mm,
cohesion. And we said on the show last week, it's great when you see those individual tries, but no try is truly often very individual. Normally it comes 90% either from a mistake from the other team, that extra 10 or 5, about 5 to 10%,
mm,
or your team just give you a worldie of a ball or a great kick and then you finish it off. And it's normally a backline player who often does it. We don't see many forwards in the URC make a breakaway. Sometimes they do because forwards now are the most athletic and agile that they've ever
mm,
been.
mm,
But still, you don't often see a front rower running 50 metres down the field and not getting stopped, do you, if he makes a breakaway? So I,
yeah.
I, it's disappointing to see because you know what the Sharks are good at. Great at scrummaging. Their set pieces can be fantastic. They do have a decent kicking game, but perhaps it's maybe a bit one dimensional. Where we saw them kind of fall short last season in that semi final was lack of
Mm,
emotion and lack of dynamism in attack. Is that the case for this season? Again, a question mark. I feel free to comment below if you have any thoughts on this.
mm,
But there seems to be something that just isn't clicking. And for me, if I was a coach, not that I would be a rugby coach, but if I was and I was in there, there needs to be some form of team bonding that needs to happen. Because if it's so hard to come
mm,
back when you've lost basically 3 games on the bounce, not 3 games on the bounce because you've had a draw in the middle, but you've lost 3 games. And when you win, you have the momentum to keep winning. That's why we've seen Leinster barely
mm,
concede many. This is why it's so
yeah.
surprising that they've lost 3 games in this URC
Mm,
season because they'd lost 2 max in the previous seasons and the seasons before that. Because when you get
mm,
into the rhythm of winning, it's you keep winning. And then when you get into the rhythm of
mm,
losing, you keep losing. And we've seen that with the Newcastle Red Bulls when they were the Newcastle Falcons. We've seen it with Dragons. Again, unfortunately, those are two examples of teams that are underfunded. I don't think the Sharks are underfunded. I think it will be something to
Mm.
do with mentality or communication. And if you don't have those core basics of cohesion and communication, you can't put those attacking maps that you get sent in your WhatsApp group or whatever communication channel you use onto the field. So that's, I suppose that's maybe a vague way of explaining what I think could be happening. But it is, I can see the disappointment on your face, and it's just not nice to like see your team when you know they've got the potential to do really well. As you
Mm.
mentioned, you can't take the credit away from Ulster because they had a bumpy ride last year, but they have seemed to ironed out
Yeah.
some of the creases in their plan. In, I feel like the business, as a business, rugby business, they've probably settled a lot more than where they were at the top of last season. So all rugby teams go through swings and roundabouts. No rugby team has been the best forever and ever and ever and ever till the end of time. Like, okay, Toulouse are probably on
Mm.
top of it now, and Bordeaux in terms of the French leagues, but they're not going to be the best teams forever and ever and ever. It's the same with teams in the URC. Like, as we said, it's a question mark. Is this is where Leinster drop off? It could be. But yeah, I do feel for the Sharks. Something is going on. It's one of those things where you like, you have a gut feeling
Mm.
something's going on, but you don't know what it is. And the club probably won't communicate that in a way because they're not going to go, yeah, we're not playing very well. This is why. They need one
Mm.
really good performance in the next fortnight to then propel them, because then you've got the
Mm.
autumn internationals. Okay, you've got a couple of URC games in between that, but it's still, then it's nearly Christmas. And then it's like, okay, then after Christmas, it gets really serious because it creeps up on you. So, yeah, I don't
Mm.
know is
Mm.
the answer. I just think, I don't think the Sharks have maybe taken on some of the learnings from last season and really reflected on them and implemented them
Mm.
with this. Maybe it's a case of they just need something, they need a South African derby, maybe, to get it firing. But
Yeah.
I don't know
Mm.
what the response is. I guess I've offered a couple of vague solutions, but
Mm.
they will be having a unique situation for sure that we can only speculate on, and hopefully we will see them be competitive in the next few rounds. And I hope for you as well, as my podcaster and my
Yeah.
friend, that they
Yeah.
improve, because I don't like to see you upset. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not ideal, is it? So, but I suppose before we move on to briefly talk about the PWR, try and end on a positive note here. I cannot wait to see Stormers and Munster play each other this season,
Um,
because they've both been so good, and they've both won the trophy, the URC, in
yeah.
previous seasons. But it feels like this year we're gonna get one of them. Both of them, I can see both of those teams in the semi-final. If they keep, I know it might be early doors, but if they
Mm.
keep that progress up, oh, I want to see that game. Very, very juicy.
Just to, just to add to that, I think that's going to be a match to watch for sure. And I think the Stormers and Munster have been the most consistent teams throughout the season. Yes, they walk away
Yes.
with wins, but I just feel like in terms of their performance itself, like they've played some really good rugby. And sometimes you walk away with a very narrow win, and it's like, okay, good, that's great. And you walk away with the 4 points or the 5 points. But I think they have just been very consistent. And yeah, the teams that they put on the field, like they just know what they're doing. It feels like they come with a game plan, they know what they're there to do. And
Mm.
it's going to be very interesting to see where they end up at. And I think your prediction of Stormers and Munster both in a semi-final can be very accurate if this might not if this might be the year that we see uh maybe a second time chance.
Yeah,
So maybe the Stormers will take it or Munster will take it. But I figure that we'll see a new champ again, not necessarily a completely new team winning the URC. But
mm,
I know it's still early days and I'm not writing Leinster off. I feel like Leinster will still end in the top eight.
yeah,
But I can really see one of those teams, well, both of those teams go really far in this competition.
for sure. I mean, the top eight, the run into the top eight is always an exciting one. And the final few weekends can really determine those positions and home semi-finals. So yeah, that's a long way off, isn't it? We've got a long way to go in the season. But yeah, I can't wait to watch that matchup later on in the year. Before we finish, if you loved the Women's World Cup as much as we did here on her side of the ruck, well, the Domestic Women's League, which is the PWR, Premiership Women's Rugby, is starting again this weekend, and there will be plenty of international superstars in action, including Red Roses players, Black Ferns players, and plenty of Canadians as well as other internationals. The PWR is probably the most, I'm not saying this biased because I'm English, but maybe I am biased. It's probably the most comprehensive women's domestic league in the whole of the world. Right now, that may change in the future, and I hope it does. But a lot of, I've spoken to a lot of Canadian internationals, and they say they get encouraged to play in the PWR because it is the most competitive club league in the world at the minute. So it's formed of 9 teams, and there are 4 games happening this weekend. If you live in the UK, you can watch round 1 for free on BBC Sport. That's against Harlequins and Loughborough Lightning. Big name Ellie Kildunn plays for Harlequins. Lucy Packer, also the England scrum half, she plays for Quins and Loughborough Lightning. They've always kind of come mid to bottom of the table in the past few years, but they'll be looking to change that this season. 2 more free games that were streamed on YouTube on Saturday. Trailfinders Women, that's my club that I work at. They are playing Exeter Chiefs at Trailfinders Sports Club this weekend. And that's followed by Sale Sharks v Leicester Tigers, both of those on YouTube. The Sunday fixture is a replay of last year's final between Gloucester Hartpury and they play Saracens. Saracens are coming in having won the PWR Cup. They've got a lot of Canadian internationals, including World Women's 15s Player of the Year, Sophie de Goody. Gloucester Hartpury have a hell of a lot of Red Roses players, including Zoe Oldcroft, Natasha Hunt and Maud Muir. So they've got players all around the park from the Red Roses in their squad, and they've won the PWR and what was the equivalent to the PWR before 3 years in a row. So they are in my top 4, predicted top 4. My top 4 are going to be Gloucester Hartpury, Sarries, predictable because they both got to the final last year, and Saracens women are in good form. I'm going to say Bristol because they've got some really good forwards, Hannah Bottoman, Lark Atkin-Davis, Sarah Byrne, some really good signings. And obviously I'm going to be backing Trailfinders to get into the top 4 because as a club there's been some really good moves this season. So yeah, hopefully it's an exciting year personally and professionally on that regard. So all of that action is kicking off. So if you're interested in watching some women's domestic rugby, that is happening. And if you want us to make any more content about that league, just drop us a comment below and I can happily do that. But for now, thank you so much for watching another episode. If you enjoyed this and you're new to the channel, please hit the red subscribe button. We really appreciate it. And if you loved our chat about the URC and you want to talk about any games in particular going forward, just drop us a comment below and feel free to like this episode. So feel free, please like this episode. It's nice to know that you enjoyed watching this. But thank you so much for watching again from me and Bernice. But signing off is me, Tash, in the UK.
Signing off is me, Bernice, from SA.
Thanks very much for watching. See you again next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.